Stories of Being is a series of conversations with a range of inspiring humans whose approaches to life each offer an important piece of the puzzle for how we go about creating the fairer, more balanced, connected and beautiful world we long for. Each conversation explores a new perspective on how we view success, connection, power and progress, and offers inspiration and guidance as we collectively transition to more harmonious ways of being with ourselves, each other, and our shared home. In today's episode, I talk to Renee Lynch. Renee is a naturopath with a focus on women's health and fertility. I met Renee a couple of years ago when I was trying to fall pregnant for the first time, and really like her approach to health in the sense that she works with clients as whole people, so looks at everything from diet, lifestyle, exercise, stress, everything. And also that, or I found when I started seeing her, I found it to be a very empowering experience, as I was kind of taking ownership of my physical body and the way I felt. In this episode, we talk about foundations of good health, the need for modalities such as this to sit alongside and work together with allopathic medicine. It's not about demonizing one or the other, but rather knowing what each bring to our health and well-being. We also talk about birth, motherhood, and the power of slowing down. I was all over the shop in this episode. I honestly, like, some of the sentences I'm talking or saying rather don't make sense. So please excuse that. But yeah, Renee's awesome. I love her. And I hope that you get something out of this and feel kind of excited about, your health and well-being afterwards. So I guess to start off, it would be really cool to kind of understand, because I don't think I know this story of yours, but how you got into this kind of health and wellness space as a naturopath, and also how you kind of personally define naturopathy and what it actually is.
So a lot of naturopaths have a big kind of health backstory, and I wish I had something grand, but for me, it was always just a love of just general health and well-being. I can remember being a teenager and having, I'd go to the newsagents and buy magazines on superfoods. No idea why. Such a random interest, but I just really loved it. I had a mum who did a few kind of diets over the years, and my sister kind of followed that for a little bit, but it was not ever really something that I never went down that path. And so, health was just always kind of there for me. And I had looked at the naturopathy degree when I was about 21. And for whatever reason, life took me in a whole heap of different directions, and then came back to it when I turned 30. It's just at a point I was working for quite a prominent business that was all about quitting sugar, and kind of put two and two together there. And, she didn't have a health qualification, and there was a few other things that popped up at that time with health coaches getting into a lot of trouble. There was one in particular, her name was Belle Gibson, and she had a cookbook that a big publishing house had put a lot of money behind because she'd healed herself with brain cancer through food. And it turned out that she lied about the whole thing. She didn't have cancer.
Yes, that rings a bell, yes.
Yeah, and it just shone this light. And I'd done a health coaching course, and all of a sudden I was like, this isn't enough. If I want to be credible, I need the degree. And so when I was turning 30, Glenn and I were going on holiday to Hawaii, and I was like, I need to study. And he backed me, obviously took a bit of a financial hit, but he wholeheartedly supported me, knowing that this is the bigger goal, the bigger picture. So that's how I kind of got into this.
And naturopathy compared to nutrition or being a dietitian or, a doctor, whatever it is, where does it kind of sit
amongst that, and also I guess amongst like the bigger medical and health system, I guess?
Okay, so we're considered a complementary medicine. We have a lot of tools in our tool belt. So with naturopathy, first and foremost, diet and lifestyle. You've got to get the foundations right. You cannot out supplement a poor diet and an unhealthy lifestyle. There's no magic pill. So we're always looking at the obstacles to cure. So if there's someone that's experiencing, issues in their life, it's about working out what we could improve, cut back on, take out so that they reach health more easily. You could put it alongside nutrition for sure. Naturopathy, in addition to the nutrition degree, we learn herbal medicine. And I suppose that's the magic. It's essentially plant medicine that's been used for thousands of years. So we have a lot of modern science backing the use of certain herbs for certain things. And then there's a lot of empirical, traditional use of herbs. Which is, really, you kind of can't put all of the focus on the science and discount the historical use of herbal medicine. So that's, I suppose, where we differentiate from nutrition. I think the thing is that every naturopath will have a different way of practicing. But for me, the foundations are key. There's, a lot of over-prescribing happening these days, and it's kind of termed green pharmacy. So it's no different from, say, going to a doctor and getting prescribed medications. So if you are working with a naturopath, you're wanting to make sure that they are, addressing all of the underlying causes and not just like putting out fires without addressing the whole person.
Yes. And is that over prescribing like herbs, but then also supplements?
Herbs and supplements, probably more so supplements. Yeah, for sure.
Why do you think that's happening? Is it like an easier?
Well, it's very easy for sure. And it's very lucrative. It's the nutraceutical industry is incredibly lucrative. Obviously not to the extent of the pharmaceutical industry, but you can make a lot of money off supplements. And then I suppose then how we like dietetics versus, say, nutrition. So dietetics it's a whole other ball game. So a nutritionist would not necessarily easily get a job in, say, a hospital system or a medical system, whereas dietetics they will get employed within the hospital system. However, dietetics is very much like numbers, and it's about the big macronutrients, and not something that I'm necessarily into. And how the medical industry sees me versus a dietitian is very different. So there would be a lot of hesitancy with a doctor recommending a naturopath as opposed to a dietitian. Yeah, so that's unfortunate, and maybe it'll change in the future. The naturopathy has taken steps towards becoming a registered profession. We've taken a step in that now the minimum education requirement is a Bachelor of Health Science, whereas previously you could get advanced diplomas and certificates and all of that kind of thing. So it is now a 4-year Bachelor of Health Science degree, and that is the minimum education. But I guess it would be incredible if they registered us, but by registering us, they could then take away certain things from us, like certain herbs. And the moment we turn our back on nature, big problems.
Well, yes. And I think very generally speaking, obviously it's more nuanced than this, but the more connected to nature we are, the healthier we are. That just seems the complete opposite to what actual health is.
Yeah, I see that more and more lately, and you probably see it more and more online. I shared something the other day about industrialized seed oils and how they're produced and how detrimental they can be to your health. They are known to be quite pro-inflammatory in an already inflammatory society. Like, we have more inflammation than ever.
Why do you think on inflammation? Like, it feels like in the last couple of years there's been more, I don't know, conversation or awareness around something like inflammation. Why do you think we're also, oh my God, or why has inflammation become a bigger issue? Is it just because we're more aware of it, or is it because of it actually being a bigger problem?
I think we have so much more knowledge now, so maybe it was present, but I think it's just like a culmination of so many things. You know, we're exposed to so many more chemicals now, not only in our air, but on our body, like what we put into our body. The seed oil industry, you know, it's cheaper. Like, I kind of get that it's cheaper, right? It's cheaper to produce your sunflower oils and canola oils, and it's all of these mass crops as opposed to like a cold pressed extra virgin olive oil. So I get that, but it's just, unfortunately, like with how much packaged food we have now, and I guess you could also put it down to, this is just like a generalization, but how busy people are, how busy families are, that we've taken a step back from actually making food from scratch. So we go to the supermarkets and we walk the middle aisles and we put the packaged food in. And I just happen to look on occasion when I'm looking for something to put in the trolley that isn't made by me. And it is hard to find anything that doesn't have industrialized seed oils. And I call it industrialized seed oils because I think we need to move away from calling them seed oils and call them what they actually are, the way they're manufactured. I just think it's exposure to, so many different things. Yeah. And it's like, I know some incredible dietitians. Like, I had the privilege of knowing the late Kate Callahan, who called herself the holistic nutritionist. Sadly, she passed from breast cancer a few years back, but she had said to me that she always had to be really mindful of what she would share online because she could have her license taken off her. I know Renee Jennings, who runs Nurture the Seed on Instagram. I've got her book next to me here. She's phenomenal, and she's all about preconception, pregnancy, postpartum, you know, children's health, and the information she shares, which is research backed, so scientific, like she does a lot of research, is very sound and very balanced and supports her argument for whole foods and liver and eggs, and really incredible work. I suppose we need people like that who want to try and work the system and, you know, open their eyes. But then there's more of a traditional dietetic picture, which is, you know, hospital based. And I mean, all we have to do is look at the food that's in hospital and know that it's not health.
No, exactly. And that's a place where it should be the most nutritious and nourishing. And
it's sick care, unfortunately. It's not health care. And then we, you know, with doctors, and I say this a lot to clients when we have conversations, when we're trying to, you know, get some pathology done, the doctors don't have a lot of time to spend with us these days. You know, we're rushing through a 15-minute consultation, and we're often, you know, it's often running late. And there is a huge gap in their education. I believe, and I could be wrong, but from memory, there's about a 4-hour lecture on nutrition in like a 7-year degree. And so I see that as a gap in their knowledge. And then there's a huge gap in my knowledge. I don't operate. I can't fix your broken bones. I can't do stitches, but there's a lot of things that I can do. So why don't we meet in the middle and be okay with the things that we don't know, but help each other with the things that we do?
Yeah, exactly. And I think like modern medicine or Western medicine, whatever you want to call it, is amazing at so many things, but it's not necessarily amazing at root cause or keeping people like healthy and vital, you know, because it's more like management rather than life-giving. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So a good example is I had a beautiful client come to me for an array of different things over the years, and she had been told that she had stage 1 bowel cancer. And when I saw her, she had this long hair, and the next time I saw her, it was cut to her shoulders. And I'm like, what's the go? She's like, well, I went to a gastroenterologist and I found out I have stage 1 bowel cancer, and there was talk of, chemo and radiation. So I thought, I'm going to lose my hair, so I might as well just chop it off. And then they told me that it's not progressed enough that we can do chemo and radiation. So they just said, we'll just watch and wait.
That's
so to me, that means it's not yet bad enough and there's nothing we can do right now. So we'll just watch and wait. And if it gets worse, then we can do chemo and radiation. And to me, I'm like, that is just absolutely absurd. There's no kind of functional testing. There's nothing like go away and try this or go and speak to this person, nothing. So she comes to me and we decide to do a functional GI map. So it's a stool sample. It's $380 to $400, and it kind of gives us an idea of what's happening in the gut. And it turns out that one of her markers that's involved with like hormone clearance and recycling of hormones was like the highest. That I was on the phone to the company and they're like, this is the highest reading we've ever seen. So basically any type of medication that this client had been given or hormone was just going round and round in her body. So I could see that her liver needed supporting and there needed to be some gut healing. So we worked on kind of clearing out estrogen and medications and, like all of these hormones essentially. And we were working on healing her gut at the same time. And I also put her on this, it's called Rybrax. I'm pretty sure it's shiitake mushroom extract, and it's been studied for cancer. It's a very expensive supplement. Anyway, she went back, 4 to 6 months later, and they did more tests, and they're like, oh, there's no cancer. So she still checks in with them and makes sure that, but like the fact is that she was sent away to get worse so that they could do something.
It's like a really simple question of asking, like, but why? So in that instance, she had this diagnosis, but yeah, that was it. It wasn't like, but why is that happening? Whereas I think that's where the big gap is, I think, and that's where something like naturopathy fills that gap.
Yeah, naturopathy, nutrition, an integrative GP, a good dietitian.
And when you were talking about that, it made me think of like when I came to see you. So we'd been trying to get pregnant for, 8 months or something, and there wasn't anything wrong. But I was still like, yeah, I just want to go and see you, like make sure everything's just operating at an optimal level. And there are a few little things that I think you tweaked with herbs and supplements and things. One of the things I felt after seeing you was like this sense of like power, kind of taking ownership of the situation and my health. And, I think there's something really empowering about approaching health in this way. Actually a really important part of health.
Yeah, well, if you think about it, I feel like we are all so disconnected from ourselves, and I don't know why we're kind of made to feel that way. We're so disconnected from the fact that we have so much control over how our body works, like stress and the food we put in our body. And it's actually mind-blowing. And I now think that it's, I'm like, why are you not more connected to yourself? But I see it all the time in clinic, like so many people who just don't realize that like they're a whole body, and that they literally have so much control over it.
And I was one of these people, I would say. It was probably only in the last maybe 4 years that I really am more in tune or feel more connected in myself, and I'm aware of like almost how I feel like physically and how that's connected. But I do think that disconnection is massive, and it's disconnection from selves, from people, from even nature. And I think all of that actually works together.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, disconnection from self and like symptoms, and not realizing when, like they actually, their gut problems or their stress or whatever, like they can work on those things. That's not normal. Or like period pain, like cramping or heavy bleeding, all of these things. And they're just like, that's their normal. So they never question anything.
And they don't realize that it can get better.
Yeah, because it might be all they've known from the moment they've, had hormones start working. And also I think, stress is massive. And I do see a lot of women who live in cities, and I talk a lot about like masculine and feminine energy. And I don't think it's really something that people kind of think too much about. But, I see a lot of mothers, or I see a lot of, say, women in business who are wanting to conceive. And so they're wearing this very like logical thinking hat, which I'm like, if you're in your head, it's generally masculine energy or yang energy. But when you drop into your body, that's the feminine energy. And it's not that one's bad, it's about having the balance. And I just think there's a huge disconnection of being in that feminine energy. And that's really where that connection to self comes in. So I'm always trying to encourage women to find ways to drop back into their body. So whether that's like, getting out in nature or putting on some type of music that just makes you move your body, without thinking too much about it, just cooking, like using your senses, really. I find that very feminine. So yeah, that's something I see a lot as well.
Well, it's funny, again, I was going to ask you that question. And this whole, when I was first starting to think about this podcast, initially the idea was all about the feminine and like seeing it as something that is actually number one need, but also like strength and power. And I think often it's not seen as that. It's seen as like soft and weak and meek and things like that. And like you said, there's a need for both in each person. And I think sometimes you need more feminine, sometimes you need masculine. But it's changing how we perceive the feminine as just something that is, powerful.
Oh, I mean, all you have to see is a woman giving birth to know that the female is powerful.
Yes, yes, 100%. I think there is nothing more powerful than a woman giving birth. They're literally bringing life into the world.
I would say there's much more strength in that than there is testicles, to be honest.
Oh my God, 100%. And I think that's why, like, even the way that now we birth has changed is because there's a fear in that female strength, and a lot of like obstetricians and stuff are male, and there's a real like, holy shit, this woman's like next.
We can't control her, right?
Yeah. Yes.
But if we do control her, then there's more need for intervention, and then we can control.
Exactly, because then they're kind of on top.
Yeah. And that's fully stereotyping and not every single person's case.
No. As a generalization.
Yeah. This book's really good for that. 10 Moons by Jane Hardwick Collins. Yeah. Incredible, because it does really talk about, the power, really.
Birthing in any way, I think, can make a woman realize how powerful she is. And I think it also you can, in that moment, you can tap into maybe something, or you can tap into that power that maybe you didn't necessarily have access to.
Yeah, you need to be open to it, because there's a lot of women that go into pregnancy feeling fear, and that's all they'll experience.
Because I think there's no right way to birth at all, and things happen, and sometimes intervention's needed. But what really gets me is that from the get-go, sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes women are made to feel that they can't even do it, so that they need something else. And sometimes that's necessary. But when that's kind of how it's presented, and that's how women feel from the get-go, I think that is, just a massive shame.
I was working with some midwives from the midwife group practice as like a consumer representative, and talked about the way they talk to women. So different medical jargon, I suppose, and how it really needs to shift, because it can often be so negative, the way, like even apparently they don't use it as much now, but like and it's just like slipped my mind, geriatric pregnancy, like,
And what's that?
I'm not
35
70.
or something? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So apparently they don't use it as much anymore. But like that's just one extreme example. But there's so many ways in which you can feel disempowered throughout different appointments based on the way they do speak to you.
And one of the biggest things of birth is like feeling comfortable and strong and all of that stuff. So yeah, all of those little things add up along the way. And then, okay, so you focus on women's health and fertility. So were you always in that kind of niche, or is that something that kind of you narrowed down on and started focusing on along the way?
I always knew that I wanted to focus on women's health, but I mean, that's so broad. It's so broad. I suppose for me, it's about trying to make a difference in like a ripple effect way. And, if you look at the health of a lot of children these days, it's quite poor. So if I can try and impact the next generation, then, my job is done. And so by doing that, if I can start working with a couple before that life is even created, like how incredible is that? Like it's pretty powerful. So if I can kind of influence the quality of egg and sperm before they come together with their 50-50 DNA and create life, then we're hopefully, building a super baby that's going to have, strong health. And then you're working with the couple and making them realize certain things in their health that they all of a sudden want to address. And I find a lot of change comes when couples are wanting to conceive, whether that's like cutting back on drinking or changing the products that they're using on their skin. Like they're just starting to become more open to these things. So not only are you impacting a future generation, but you're making changes within grown adults who then speak to a friend and mention one thing, and then that friend changes that, and that friend talks to the next friend, and it's, just this little ripple effect of small changes in people's lives.
Are you an advocate for, like, I guess, how would you describe it? Progress over perfection, like these small changes. If you can't do it all, that's okay. I say that because sometimes it feels like you have to do everything perfectly for it to actually count. But a lot of the time, that's not necessarily.
No, not at all. I mean, it's all about sustainable changes. I want my clients to live this way and enjoy living this way, as opposed to it being like this black and white thing where they have to like ditch everything and, only eat this way and only use these products. So is it Maya, what's her name? Is it Maya Angelou? Is that, she's got this quote, once you know better, do better, so like if it's coming down to like changing your personal care products and your cleaning products at home, use up what you've got and then start replacing things one by one. Or, just start adding in some things, or cutting, if you're having 3 coffees a day, let's cut to 2. Like it's got to be sustainable. Otherwise it gets put in the too hard basket.
Yeah, exactly. And I think as well, then people's like defenses go up.
Yeah.
And so they just become closed off to all of it.
Yeah. I'm not about diets. I'm not about fads. I just want people to see the benefit of a whole food way of eating. So like I love pizza and I love a good burger, and, like life is about enjoyment first and foremost. I believe that if you're sitting there and you're berating the plate in front of you, whether that's a plate full of really healthy food or a burger, the mind, like that takes over whatever's on your plate.
And that makes sense with the, like what we were saying before about the mind-body connection. If you're so, obsessed about it or consumed by it, then, that will impact your health. If that's about like eating super, super healthy or whatever it is.
Because it's the stress aspect.
You mentioned like cleaning products and personal care products just before. Why, I guess, is it important to think about those things and how they can impact, I guess, just like health overall or things like fertility?
So the beauty industry, it's an unregulated industry, meaning that they can put lots of different things in their products and no one's kind of telling them, no, you can't do that. Unless you're, say, from somewhere in Scandinavia where they have so many strict things in place, which is fantastic. But we have, like, there's, things in products over here that other countries have banned for years. Like if it's something that you're wanting to start investigating, there's an app called Think Dirty, and you can kind of like, scan a MAC product or type in NARS, whatever, or, insert the brand, and it will give you a ranking, like green is good, orange is okay, red is ditch, and it will bring up the ingredients and then the research of, say, what they're linked to. So we've got all of these products with all of these like colors and fragrances and chemicals, and I think like on average a woman will walk out of the house with 9 different products on her, like from the beginning of the day. So if you're in the shower, you've washed your body, you've washed your face, maybe they're 2 different things. Maybe you brush your teeth, you hop out of the shower, put on deodorant, put on a body lotion, maybe you've got a serum and then a moisturizer and then an eye cream and then a sunblock, a tinted moisturizer, a concealer, mascara, lip gloss. Like, that's probably over 9. That's a whole lot of stuff going on to an organ that's super absorbent. And a lot of these, we call them endocrine disrupting chemicals, which in simple terms just means hormone disrupting chemicals, because they have the ability to make their way into our bloodstream and fit into the different receptors that our hormones fit in, and it can muck our hormonal system up. I find it really interesting. There's a lot of research in the past few years on phthalates, and a lot of the big headlines are in regards to male health. So Dr. Shanna Swan, she did a PhD in phthalates, and her estimates are that if we continue using phthalates in the way we are now, that sperm counts could be at 0 by the year 2050, because that's how much they've declined in the past 50 years. And so phthalates are basically anything that smells that isn't from essential oil. So perfumes, Lynx, Rexona, Nivea, Dove, anything that has a smell, the smelly things that you hang in your car, the things that you plug in to your PowerPoints to make a room smell good, air fresheners. So anything that has a scent, or any type of plastic that's flexible, that's bendy. Rubber duckies in a bath is a good example. Or like thermal receipts from shopping centres, really, really, really high concentration on those. And so she's come out with this, like, the male approach. Like, obviously it affects female health, but maybe it's more of a shock factor talking about it from a male health perspective, because that seems to get a lot more attention. So we're talking about reduced testy size in future generations because of the amount of phthalates found in the umbilical cord. So decreased testosterone and sperm counts. So yeah, absolutely crazy. But this industry, like the phthalates and plastic industry, is a byproduct of the petroleum industry. And that is obviously far too lucrative to halt. And they would never want to admit that, what they're doing is wrong. So we're never going to get rid of these things, but it's just, I suppose, an invitation to do the work yourself in your home and take back a bit of control.
So do you think change just generally, do you think that comes from the individual rather than, say, you know,
Industry
itself? Or
nobody is coming to save you. And that, like, I've shared stuff like that before, and it seems quite doom and gloom, but it's more of an invitation to kind of take back control. There is nobody who's coming to save you, and this is like an extreme version, but somebody breaks into your house and you call 000. By the time they get there, who knows what's happened? But if you know how to protect yourself, it ain't going to happen. They're not going to knock back on your door again. Like just you break down in the middle of nowhere and you've got a flat tire and you don't know how to change the tire. Nobody's coming to save you, And it's the same with your health. You need to, like, the petroleum industry is not going to stop producing all these things. They're not going anywhere. Nobody's coming to save you. So make the changes yourself.
And I think it's slightly doom and gloom, but also not at the same time, because I think otherwise we just sit around waiting for change and like, oh, this should change, and like, that's fucked, and like, should be different. But we're just sitting and waiting for something to happen. Whereas if kind of that mentality of no one's going to save you, it puts the power to yourself, and that actually, in a roundabout way, is empowering.
Well, yeah, and that's how I share it. Well, I hope it comes across. Yes, it is a little bit doom and gloom, I get it, but it should be empowering because, like, it is the reality. There is, like, you and your family and your family's health. It's on you. It's not on anyone else. It's on the way you live and how you feed your family and the things that you talk about in your household. And that's the reality. The government's not here to save you. The medical industry, like, they're not necessarily about health. They're there if you're sick, but they're not going to tell you how to get better.
And just the way those things are set up, like, for change to happen, it's like years and years and years, because of 4-year terms, whatever, it's the runway to change is so incredibly long. Whereas if you kind of take that back, you could literally start changing things tomorrow, in small increments, but be instantaneous.
And it's easy, like, so many of the things to change are free, like get out in nature, drink more water, get out in the sunshine safely, get better sleep. Like, they're free.
Well, that's another thing I was going to ask you was vitamin D. So that's like a vitamin. I think there's some vitamins that obviously people know, like vitamin C and things like that. But vitamin D is maybe a bit under the radar, but is like hugely important for many things in terms of our health. So it would be awesome if you could kind of chat through that, like why it's important and then the best ways to get it, I suppose.
So there's a lot of people who say it shouldn't be called vitamin D, it should be called hormone D because of its important with how important it is for our hormone health. It's a building block for hormones, but it's also incredibly important for our immune health. So any kind of autoimmune, I see so much in clinic, low vitamin D, and getting told by their doctor that it's fine because it's within range. So the anti-Mullerian hormone, or AMH, which is the kind of test done for ovarian reserve, which a lot of young women often get done by their doctor, and it's very fear-based because it makes them believe that they have low ovarian reserve, but actually vitamin D status can influence that. So it's just so incredibly important. But if you think about how much, especially in Australia, how much we fear the sun, we've literally had so much fear put into us. And listen, don't go out in the middle of the day and not kind of look after yourself, but we do need sunshine. We need sunshine. So we need sunshine to be able to build up melanin in the skin, which actually protects us from the sun. But we also need sun so that we get vitamin D. Like, if you're talking about where you get vitamin D from, first and foremost, the sun. And it's about knowing your upper limit. So I'm quite fair. So, 20 minutes or so for me is probably all I need before I'll put on a hat and put on non-toxic sunscreen. But yeah, it's definitely important to know your upper limit and then, put on a rashi, a t-shirt, a hat, whatever it is. So like egg yolk is you can get some vitamin D from it. Cod liver oil, there's some naturally occurring vitamin D, and mushrooms are another one. And do you know how you increase the vitamin D in mushrooms?
Put them in the sun.
Exactly. That's exactly what you do. Like there you go. So it even works in nature.
Not always, but like we were saying before, so many answers are within nature, right? But that's also another huge one, is the personal connection and community, and that's the importance of that in our health.
Hugely. You just have to look at mothers who are trying to do it all when like you really do need more than just yourself. Never have I wished that I lived closer to my parents than since having children, and just being able to have, mum or dad come around and look after the kids so you can go out for dinner or, work a few hours, knowing that your children are cared for by family, by someone who loves them just as much as you do. Maybe cook you a meal.
I've been thinking about motherhood a lot recently, and like, oh my God, so many things. But like, I think one of the reasons, and it's similar to what you just said, but one of the reasons women or mothers are so, say, depleted or stressed or whatever it is obviously you're caring for a human, like, you're maybe not sleeping as well, blah, blah, blah. But I also think it's because in this day and age, often you have a child and that is, being a mother becomes your main identity. And we often forget that we're so much more than just one thing, but there's no room to or it's much harder to keep those other parts of yourself kind of nourished and in touch with those other parts of yourself, because like you said, you're just doing it on your own. But I think women need all of these different things. And obviously, motherhood will probably be the prominent one for X amount of time. But yeah, we're whole beings that need to stay connected to the other parts of ourselves. And I think that's a huge part of, the depletion and I'm just a mum, or I'm so stressed because I'm going back to work. And, like all of these things, because it's not this, nourishment of those different parts of ourselves.
Yeah, my friend Naomi, who's a postpartum doula, she's been sharing a lot on this topic lately. She just released a webinar. I think it's like $22, and it's all about returning to work. And she shared some really incredible data, which showed it compared like career, house chores and childcare, and it compared the male versus the female, and it showed the male's career basically up the top, never really changed. And then it showed, the female's career was up high, and then she had kids and it basically plummeted. And then maybe later in life it went up a little bit. And then it was like the house chores. So when the baby was born, there was a little spike in the man's, and then it dipped back down in the woman's. It started neutral and then it just increased. And then childcare, when the baby was born, the male spiked a little bit and then went back to normal, and the woman's skyrocketed. So not only has she now got a life to look after, but she's got just as many, like more house chores than she did before, and then we only have to look at how much a woman's superannuation gets hit because she's out of the workplace. And it's just so out of balance, so incredibly out of balance. And then you're looking after this life, you're making sure that, they're healthy, they're fed, they're getting outside enough. And she's shared a really good post on this the other day as well, like they're going to the dentist or the chiro or whatever it is, but you're not. And like what I try to talk to my clients about is, there's a reason why when you're on a flight and it's going down, or they give you the advice to fit your own oxygen mask before you help anyone out, before you help, children or elderly. because you're useless if you are flatlining. You're useless. Like, you can't help anyone unless you're helping yourself.
And there's a real like martyrdom around, well, there can be. Okay, so I backtrack. Sorry. So I saw this post the other day, or someone posted something the other day, and it was talking about how like his wife was so selfless or whatever. And I was like, that's kind of lovely, but also no.
Yeah.
Like,
no.
no.
No, absolutely not. Glennon Doyle's book is really good for that. It's in my boot because I'm donating it. I put it in Untamed. I put it in so many treatment plans because she literally says, you know, we say that a woman is selfless, like it's the most incredible compliment you can give her, but what you're actually saying is she has to lose all of herself to be like ranked that high. And I think that's very much a trait from maybe our mum's generation, where being selfless was what they did, and it's not something that I don't want my daughters to see that. I want them to see me go to appointments or, you know, get dressed up to go out. Not that at that point yet with the 6-month-old, but you know, to be enjoying the work that I do. And it's not I have to go to work, I get to go to work. You know, I want them to see those things because I'm their role model of what a woman is. Yeah, I don't want to give it all up and them to see that that's what they have to do.
Well, I guess on that, like, what do you, there's never a right answer, and it's always changing, I think, as a parent or as a mother. But how do you see or approach the kind of the idea of the balance of motherhood and also maintaining that sense of self and putting yourself first, or not first, but, you know, nurturing yourself?
No, you do have to come first. This, I suppose, like the small things are that feeding myself first. So I like this is, and I talk to my mom about this all the time. So if she listens, she'll laugh, but she would always go last serving up her plate. Always. I'm like, you cooked it, dish that up and sit down. And she still does it. She still, unless I really pester her to do it. But I'm very much about eating when I'm hungry and making sure I have enough. I try and do little appointments for myself, like sauna down the road, that kind of thing. It has been tricky with Glenn's commute. I think it's been 2 years he's been out at Parramatta, and so he would leave at like 4 a.m. to go to the gym before work. So there's no getting up and doing a class, but even if he was to be at home, he would be leaving at like 5:30, and there's no class for me to do at that time anyway. And he gets home at around, you know, 6:30ish, sometimes closer to 7. So that's been really tricky. And it's, you know, I can't just escape and go and do a class. So I have to look after myself at home. So we have equipment at home that I can, you know, move my body. And I suppose like on the day where I don't have daycare or preschool for my daughter, it's just about taking it slow, going to the beach, as much for her as it is for me. And I'll only do one big thing that day. I won't try and then cram it in by going out in the afternoon. And then balance in the way I work. Like, I'm only working 2 days. And those 2 days are not like 9 till 5, because that doesn't exist for me. I have to wake up and, you know, make lunch and drop off to preschool. So I'm only working 9:30 to 2:30 2 days a week, and that's enough for me. And I'm at home while my baby's getting cared for at home, and it just feels right for where I am right now. I think it's about just realizing where you're at in the season of your life and kind of adjusting accordingly. And right now I am required to be at home a little bit more because I am exclusively breastfeeding, and that is okay, and not let my ego get in the way of how I want it to look, because in a few years' time I'm going to have girls that are older, and I'll wish these days back, and I'll be able to do those things.
I think it's such a good point. And like at the time, it feels like it never ends and it's forever. But I say this with like the sleep thing, like Andy is not a good, up until recently, she was still waking every 2 hours. And she now only probably sleeps every four, she'll sleep for 4 hour stretches. But recently I've just been like, okay, it might be like 5 years, say if we have another kid, 5 years, maybe longer of like not having very good sleep. But really, in the grand scheme of things, that is not that much.
Yeah, and when you have a teenager who may not want to talk to you, you'll be wishing for those wakes where all she wanted was you. It's just hard because at the time it can feel very much like Groundhog Day.
And then one last question for you, and you kind of touched on it when you were talking about like taking it slow, when you have both girls and things. But you seem to be like a big advocate for the power of slowing down just in general. I think especially in a world where it's always like hustle and you're a mom, you have a job, you have a side hustle, like you kind of have to be doing everything. So I'd just love to hear your thoughts on slowing down, and I guess also the power in that.
Yeah, I think it comes back to that yin and yang energy and that masculine, feminine. And if we're always doing, rushing, going, that's that masculine energy, and we end up so out of balance, and we end up being more susceptible to burning out because we're out of balance. I can't say, like, I'm definitely a work in progress. Like I really try. It is a practice. It's hard. It's hard to slow down. It is so hard to slow down because we are led to believe that we need to fill our time with anything and everything. We can't even stand in the line at a grocery store without looking at our phone. So I think it's just about trying to find ways to disconnect and be okay with doing nothing and being mindful of the things that you do fill your time with. So sometimes, like, I love spending time in the kitchen, but if I'm in there too much, what is it in my life that I'm avoiding? Like, am I avoiding just sitting down and playing? This is totally going off tangent, but I think that because of the way our life is paced, we find it hard to bring slowness in. And so you have to work at it. A few months ago, I joined the Daily Rest Studio by Emmy Ray. I used to work with her years ago, and what she's created is absolutely beautiful. So she's got like an online membership with a whole library full of different breath practices, restorative yoga, yin yoga. You'll only find a very small portion of, say, faster paced sessions, like a touch of vinyasa, but her thing is about rest and bringing rest as a practice into the everyday and taking rest multiple times throughout the day. Like, there's enough research to show that it works, like non-sleep deep rest, yoga nidra, breath work, all of these things have shown to be incredibly powerful for how productive we are. So it's about working smarter, not harder, really. So I mean, that often goes into my treatment plans. I'm like, if you can afford it, sign up for this membership. I just think it's really beautiful to bring rest as a practice in and really sit with how difficult it is.
Oh my gosh, yes, that's what I was thinking. I was like, when you actually start literally maybe just sitting on the couch doing nothing, like no phone, nothing, that because we're so used to being distracted, or like our nervous systems, I don't think, are used to that. So it can be so uncomfortable initially because our body and minds are just not used to that stillness.
No, I mean, like, you can even be laying there watching a movie and on your phone, the second screen thing. But even just like legs up the wall, or legs on the couch, or legs on the end of the bed, how much body you feel the energy, and you feel the restlessness in your body. when you should just be surrendering to rest. She does every month she does a full moon practice, and I've fallen asleep a few times in it, which I think is incredible because I do find it hard to really drop in and slow down. But you definitely notice like your weak spots, that's for sure. But I do think it needs to be prioritized because it's the only way. Like if we're not in control of our breath, if we don't get out of that chest breathing into belly breathing, like our breath is the only thing that tells our body that we're safe, that we're okay, that everything's okay, and to kind of switch from that sympathetic nervous system into the parasympathetic nervous system, which is our rest and digest.
Yeah, and that's fundamental to so many things, so many parts of health.
Breath is life, right? Yeah, even there's a lot of, obviously we work a lot on computers now, and just take note when you're using your computer. It's very common to withhold your breath. And when you actually realize that you haven't been breathing, or very minimally, like actually holding it. So just be mindful of when you're on your computer to stop, and like even if you have to set reminders in your phone to take breathing breaks or rest breaks.
Isn't that wild? That like, not that it's come to that, but that's something some people have to do, or that we have to do, is to set reminders to breathe.
Yes, yeah. Or even like as mothers, and this is a really common one, because we're doing. Again, that's very much chest breathing, but you might find that you put your child to bed at night and it's like the first deep breath that you've taken for the whole day because you've been so up in your chest. Being mindful of your breath, and when you think about it, taking a few belly breaths and really using that time to just kind of reset.
It's so true. And then once you actually do it, you notice how different you feel. It's just like a space and like a calmness.
Apparently sighing is really effective. Yeah, like letting out loud sighs. Very, very interesting.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's a whole thing.
Yeah, and again, it's free.